All right. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. If the sound's not great, I apologize, but you can hear us. So,
well, we project.
And we are both very loud.
The mic could be in the back of the room.
So, let's get to it then. So the topic of conversation today is the skill tree. So we put out an update, I want to say that was like a month ago, 6 weeks ago, with where we were headed on skills, and we got a lot of feedback. Some of it very positive, some of it very negative. There were some really valid concerns, I think, and criticisms of the system. So we listen to you guys. Every time we post this stuff, we go through it, and we don't always agree. But sometimes there are points that are like, yeah, that's a really, really valid point. And one of the biggest ones that I took away last time was that expecting people to change, VIP or not VIP.
Don't tap the table.
Sorry, expecting people, I do that all the time, expecting people to be able to be available at a moment's notice to get in and change their skill training is just not a very player-friendly or reasonable approach. And as soon as I went through it, I was like, that's an incredibly valid point. So
I mean, it's what people hate the most about a lot of phone games is
right,
feeling like it's like work. You have to, I got to check in 4 hours. I got to check in every 8 hours.
Right, exactly. So we do want VIP to be a big convenience. We want to make people want it because, quite frankly, that's the lifeblood that's going to keep this game updated on it for the next 10 years. But at the same time, we do want non-VIP to not feel like it's just a constant drag, right? We're not creating one of those free-to-play mobile games. So I think that where we ended up now, we'll go through the whole system, but I think you guys, I think it's a great system. I'm actually really happy with it. I'm really proud of it. And so Billy's got some mock-ups. We're going to go through it. Yep. Let's just kind of start at the beginning. I actually brought notes this time because we've got so many little points I want to make sure that we
do. You want to cover the new organization before we actually had kind of a top line of universal skills.
We did.
And then a bottom line of archetype and archetype skills.
It was all the archetypes. So a lot of this was driven by the fact that with the race class split, the archetype trees didn't make sense anymore. Mm-hmm. So we had to go back and adjust it. That plus the feedback. Really, I wanted to take the system all the way to completion. I wanted to say, let's walk this through, let's look at it from every angle, and let's come up with the final solution that we think we can ship with. And that includes other benefits that you guys don't think, or other concerns that you guys don't necessarily think about. Like, I want to make sure that the VIP benefit, the advantage of VIP, I want to make sure that it's easy to understand, so that you can just explain it to somebody in a hallway conversation without having to go, well, let me explain this entire system to you, and then you'll see the benefit. So there's a lot of different ways we looked at it. So let's go through it.
Yep.
So at the top level now, there are 3 major spheres. You've got a profession sphere, a racial sphere, and a class sphere. Inside of each of these, the trees have been reorganized, and they've been reorganized in ways that I think are very elegant, and we're going to have Blair and Hallish walk you through some examples of how that works. At the highest level, the basic idea is that VIP players or non-VIP players will be able to train in parallel 1 track in each of these spheres. VIP players will get to train in 2 tracks in any one of these spheres. However, the same consideration that we had before is still in place, which is that you cannot train in multiple skill trees at the same time. So you are getting more breadth of experience, not more depth of experience. You can't literally get faster along 1 track than a person who is not VIP. So let's click on one of these now and kind of show the skills system has this higher level where you come into this page and it shows you the spheres. You click on one of those now, and it goes to basically a tree of trees. So this tree of trees is showing you basically prereqed skill trees that you can drill down into, and there's a percentage of completion of the overall tree that you have to finish in one before it leads to or unlocks the next of them. The other thing that you'll notice is that, remember, these are happening over time. The general philosophy is to start with character decisions that are very, very broad, and then over time you narrow your focus. So the initial, for example, in the racial tree, you start with racial basics. Click on that one real quick. If you go into racial basics, you're going to get a whole bunch of skills that give you benefit with every race in the game. So it's basically a way to start down that path. Jump back out 1 level now.
Sure.
Then when you come back out, the next one is actually a grouping that includes 4 of the 12 classes. So then you choose the skill tree of human, sylvan, or monster. And that means the benefits of the skills in those tree are actually giving you a broad brush. You're specializing, but you're not specializing in a particular race at this point. You're specializing in a category of race. So if I train things in sylvan, then I'm going to get the benefit of that with any characters that are elves or fae. So then inside the elf branch, which is one layer lower than that, I'm not specializing in a particular race. I'm getting benefit of 2 races. So in that case, it's going to be basically the elves, right? It's going to be wood elves and high elves. So the whole thing is structured on this idea that over time, you are slowly but surely drilling down onto a more and more specific role. What's interesting about that is it means that if I've got, for VIP, 2 tracks, and I decide in racial I want to invest in both sylvan and monster, I'm getting benefit in 8 of the races as opposed to having to pick one from the beginning. The problem that I didn't like with archetypes is once I start to invest in knight, ain't nothing ever going to stop me from playing knights, right? There's no reason for me to want to go and experiment with other classes or other archetypes back in the archetype days because I've already put the investment in knight, so I wouldn't get the benefit of that. With this, I'm enticed and tempted to try other combinations because I get 100% credit for that training in those other races and classes. So you'll notice that a big thing that we're trying to do in this is entice people to try out combinations. We built this ridiculously large tree of race and discipline and class combinations. We want people to actually try that tree. We want them to run the tree to try and find the build that is like perfect for them. That's part of the game. So okay, so I've talked a lot when I haven't looked at chat at all. So I think we should probably pause for a second to see what I forgot to even mention. So Billy looks bored. That's the first concept.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's because I'm talking.
I like the next line. Let's imagine his inner monologue.
Yeah. I'm making sure the demo runs smoothly.
So with VIP, you can go to multiple branches. The key is you can't do multiple training in the same branch at once. So that if it's basically VIP, that idea that we had originally that VIP gives you more options, not gives you more power. We've taken that to this new system with the way we branched it, takes that to an obscene degree. It also answers the question, why wouldn't I just buy two non-VIP accounts? Because you're getting a combinatory result out of how many race, class, discipline combinations by stacking VIP and doing your training on a single account. So if you think about, let's say I do 2 different groups of 4 and 4. If I were to split that across 2 different accounts, then I'm going to have those 4 options on one account and those 4 on the other account. If you put those onto the same account, that's now 16 additional options. Multiply that times 16 class options and times 16 profession options. It starts to very quickly blossom out to where you can just do multiple non-VIP, but clearly if you want to explore the system of combinations, the right answer is to try and get it on a single account. So I think it's a very elegant solution. I think it's really cool. So once we get to man, can I train both Half-Blood and Human at the same time as VIP? Yes, you could, because those are separate trees.
Yep.
Blazen had a question. What happens when you only have basics?
In the beginning, when you only have basics. So I think what we're going to have to do is speed you through the basics tree really, really quickly is the answer to that. So there are some other things that we haven't gotten to yet that I want to talk about, the time bank and the tomes, that I think will also make that a very interesting thing for us to discuss. So let's hold off on that for a second. Okay, so what did I not cover on the high level? Is there anything?
Nothing. I mean, navigation.
You guys are going to Blair and Hallish are going to jump in and go to the trees and show you some of these things as well.
Like full disclosure, the part that I'm working on right now is putting together the entire navigation flow, and then we're going to make all these skill trees actually data driven probably in the next week or so. Right. So it's getting to the point now where it's all coming together and becoming a real thing. So
there's one point I want to point out real quick because it's been brought up a lot of times. This does mean that the previous decision that we had made where every person needed to really choose whether they wanted to be a combatant or a crafter or a harvester. We've definitely blurred that line now because with 2 VIP tracks, you really pick 2 of the 3, combat, crafting, exploration. So I think it doesn't give you all the things, but it definitely gives you way more options than you had before. So I think that's a really nice kind of way to split the baby on that one. I think that's going to be very well
means
received.
that I think a lot of players early on, especially, like they'll go through a somewhat common progression track early on, so they'll be able to share a lot of kind of their own stories and progress together. But then from there, they get to kind of specialize and then deviate from there, as opposed to like just being scattershot right off the bat. You know? Which makes it a little easier for us to like train people on how to play the game and tailor the early stages of the game.
All right, so you want to jump over to Time Bank real quick?
Yeah, let's
So I think what we'll probably do is have you and I cover the whole thing, and then have Blair and Hallish get in to actually discuss specific skill trees, and then maybe after that I'll jump back in with Blair and we can do general Q&A.
Sure.
Does that seem reasonable?
Perfect.
You would think we would discuss this before we got on camera, or maybe while the sound was off, but no, I didn't like the plan that we discussed.
It's off the cuff, baby.
All right, now we're here. So, okay, so let's talk about the Time Bank. So, I mentioned earlier that a big consideration was the idea that I had to get up at 3:17 in the morning. Without a queuing system, that was much more of a problem for non-VIP, but quite frankly, it was actually a problem for VIP as well. Like if you hit the end of a PIP of training, you would go on to the next one if you were VIP, but when you hit the end of that skill, it just kind of stopped. And if you had multiple skills training, that meant that we were still requiring you were going to lose efficiency of time if you happen to be taking a final when one of those skills came up. So we have this concept now of a time bank. So you have a time bank for each of these skill trees. There's not one global time bank. Each skill tree has a time bank. So for example, in racial basics, there's your time bank. When you hit the end of training and the system doesn't know what you want to train next, you start to accumulate minutes in your time bank. For non-VIP, the time bank will allow you to collect minutes up to 24 hours. And when you get back into the game, you can just say, in the time bank of racial basics, I've got 13 hours and 12 minutes. I'm going to spend those on this skill or that skill. You spend it basically anywhere in the tree that is available and open to you. For VIP players, that limit is 30 days. So the idea there is basically non-VIP. You don't even have to log in every 12 hours. It's just once a day. Get in once a day, and you don't lose any efficiency. For VIP, you can go on vacation for 3 weeks. We just don't care, right? Like that was the whole idea there, is it's convenience. And this also, this is a really nice system, I think, because it means that you're committing to a particular skill tree, but you're not committing to a particular skill in that tree. Like you can at the last minute come in and decide, you know what, actually now that I've trained up to this level of pips in this skill, I don't actually want to continue on that skill. I think I'm going to move on, or I think I'm going to jump tracks. So the system allows you to do that. So I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
So this is an interesting opportunity for us because we have this concept of a time bank now. It answered 2 additional questions that we had kind of kicked the can on and hadn't figured out how we were going to solve. One is, how can players catch up with each other? And the other is, can we ever do a respec mechanic? And I'll tackle both of those. So now that we have the idea of the time bank, and the time bank is accumulating time, we have an idea of a training tome. And a training tome, which is right down here, allows you to basically store those minutes in an object, and the amount of minutes is basically 72 hours. And you're encapsulating 72 hours of whatever this skill tree is into an object that you can then trade to other players. Those other players can then basically use that object right out of their spirit bank, and it will fill their time bank with those minutes. So if I put 72 hours of racial basics into a tome, I can give that tome to you. You can come in and you can apply that, and it will actually allow you to apply those minutes into your skills. There's a diminishing returns curve on it, though. So the amount of time that you get out of it, the minutes, depends on how much you've already invested in this tree. Yeah. So if you're at the 90% mark, you're only getting 10% credit for those minutes. If you're at the 50% mark, you get 50%. If you're at 0%, though, it's a great catch-up mechanic. What's nice about this, too, is you're not buying power from us. Some other player out there had to actually invest and spend those minutes. So it's a lateral transfer of power from one player to another, and you can trade these in the game. So a lot of times, I think what we'll see just like VIP tickets, this allows players with more money than time to invest that money and trade it for other players who have more time than money. I think it's a really nice balance. I think it'll be really cool. So you showed creating one. You trade. They basically store in your account bank. Yeah. Remember that those are marked for a particular tree, so I can't take Elven training and apply it to Stoneborn. It's specific to that tree. I expect that there's going to be a very, very brisk economy around these. So that basically gives us our catch-up mechanic so the players who start the game late can actually get a catch-up, but they're getting it from other players, and in order to get it from other players, they're going to have to provide them goods or services. Or they could potentially buy VIP tickets, which is another way that non-VIP people can get the benefit of this system without actually having to put any additional money into the system. So I think that's really cool as well. Okay, so let's see. So I'm telling you guys, I told you that I thought we nailed it on this system. So, and I firmly believe it. Like we went through this one, and I think that we hit it. It solved all the problems. I think it gives us the things that we need. It sets us up for the future. Oh, respec. I said I'd talk about that. We'll show the tree real quick. This is another tree view over here on the left that Billy's got. So if you want to, basically you can think of this almost like File Viewer or Explorer, right? Yeah. It's another way of looking at the same data. This is like
the power user view. This means that you don't have to actually jump around any of the navigation. You can go straight to where you're looking. You get all your progress information.
The unlocks, the bars.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, this is for people who kind of...
And if you click on one of those, it'll jump you straight to it.
Yeah, exactly. It's a navigation pane as well as just like general progress information. And yeah, I mean, really, that's really tailored for the people who know what they want to do, know where they want to go, and then they don't want to just go through all the pretty animations to get there.
Cool. Okay, so let me see what else there is on here that I forgot to add.
I love making notes.
Oh, one note about the time bank. So I mentioned that there is a cap on the accumulated minutes, and that is true. So for non-VIP at 24 hours, if you haven't selected something and your time bank is full, you'll stop accumulating. That's the hard cap on accumulating minutes. That's not an overall cap, though. That doesn't mean you couldn't use tomes, because we want non-VIP to be able to use tomes as well. So if I apply a tome, it will overflow my time bank. We're okay with that. But once you've hit if you're 24 hours or greater, you will not accumulate minutes. So that means if you want to use a tome, you want to spend it immediately, because otherwise you're going to be losing time. I think that's a pretty minor thing, though. I don't think that's going to cause anybody too much trouble. Because if you're not ready to spend it, just don't redeem it. Leave it sitting in your account bank as a tome, and it doesn't cost you anything at all. So, what else am I not covering?
As far as my bit, I think that's all I needed to cover. I mean,
yeah, was there anything else?
It's really just if we want to just look at the comparison between what
we were before,
skills used to be versus where it's at now.
All right, so time bank, redemption, and use. Talked about the diminishing returns. And we talked about the combinations, the way that the things are structured now, how clearly you're going to want to stack VIP on a single account because it's going to give you that many more combinations. And with our tree being as explosive as it is, I really like that idea too. Right?
Now it actually makes sense, like what it does, what it's used for. And now, from a high level view, you get this really clear indication of 1 versus 2. Yeah, and the organization of everything just makes sense.
So going into class real quick, because I think that's a good one. But so you notice the class, after you get through combat class basics, the initial decision we make is just fighter, mage, and rogue. Yeah. I like that, because generally speaking, people do like to kind of pick certain roles that they play in the game. Yeah. But it really sucks when you pick a role and you don't know really what that class is going to play like, right? So I like to play fighters. I get in and I'm like, yeah, Myrmidons, those look really cool. I like Minotaurs. You play it, and then you're into it for a while, and you decide, shit, I should have chosen Champion. Like, I still want to play a fighter, but Champion would have been much better for my play style. With our old system, well, too bad. Like, you were just
like
stuck.
Your play style had to be like, I'm a melee support class stealth guy.
Who also happens to be this particular, like, cosmetics and power mechanics and stuff like that. So now, because you'll be in that fighter tree for a couple months, you get to play all of those combinations and get 100% full credit for skill. I think, to me, that's huge, right? And then eventually, we don't even have it going all the way down to a particular class, right? It goes fighter, and then you choose either barbarian or chivalry. So if you choose chivalry, you're going to do knight or Templar. If you choose barbarian, you're going to do champion or myrmidons. You still, even in those trees, are getting the benefit of multiple classes. Again, the whole thing is swiveled towards the idea that we want you trying out different class and race combinations and discipline combinations.
Yeah.
So.
And we're not showing anything today, but I know pretty soon we're going to have some pretty exciting character creation updates that tie right into all
that. Absolutely. Yeah. So you guys will be seeing that.
This is going to be really fun.
All right, you guys are 30 minutes.
Okay. Blair, do you want to walk through a example race and example class? Go through a couple of those things?
The math guys are coming. We're waiting for you to move.
All right.
Sounds great. I just need a minute.
So, all right.
The math guys are coming.
Oh, somebody mentioned no healer class, so you might want to cover that, Blair, because there is a cleric. So where would the cleric be?
We'll cover that. Do some QA real quick while I.
Cool. All right, guys. I'll be back in a bit, and we can do a last-minute Q&A. Here it comes. The designers.
I'm waiting for.
Yep. We are encountering
more technical.
I'm telling. For we're doing it live.
Leaving everything up.
Yeah, I'm trying to revert my skill viewer. Isn't unresponsive. There we go.
So I actually have a little FAQ specifically where I talk about pay-to-win concerns. So we will circle around at the end and make sure that we cover those, because I am thoroughly convinced that this system is solid and, in fact, actually better than where we were before.
I'm gonna get you up and ready. Okay. Yeah. I'm basically reverting it back to where it's the old skill tree without being able to switch back and forth.
Okay. Oh, I wanted the new skill tree.
Sorry. You can't have the nice things, Blair.
Okay.
Also,
I'll sit down and talk.
I'm hogging the camera.
Well, Billy's
in my camera now.
I'll loom.
Mark can hover over me.
I'll be like,
we can fantastically see your elbow.
Yes.
My elbow.
Yeah.
I can be like this.
Featuring
actually, yeah. I mean, you guys can squeeze over. I don't have to be all in for it.
Can I get just off to the side?
Look at that. That was awesome. Anyways, okay. So what Todd didn't mention, and I saw some of the comments off camera, and I will address them, which is if I were to take a tome from Billy and I'm already 50% trained through that tree, I only get 50% credit from that tome. So the idea that you can use 32 accounts to feed one account, yeah, but the diminishing returns are so quick. You're going to use a lot of those things. So I don't think it's worthwhile to have 32 accounts doing that. I mean, whatever. The other concern was, again, feeding with 32 accounts. Those accounts would have to be at the same progression level to pass off those tomes. So they have to train through the basics to get to the next tier. To get to the next tier, because the time bank is based on the tree, you have to train that deep. So it's not just like you can have a bunch of alt accounts feeding a master account. Yep. So there is a considerable amount of training that any other accounts need to do if they want to sell those specific tomes. Now, what that can mean, though, is, yeah, these tomes that nobody really likes to trade in Fairy or Fae, and you specialize in that, you might have a market corner on that if you want to do it. Also, the time is being earned by somebody, right? It's not just that you're creating time. The time still has to come from somebody sitting there and filling up time bank. So again, it's not like you're just creating a bunch of free XP on the system. So we're not too concerned about that right now. So that's just some of the high-level concerns that I saw
I mean, if you get us back to the old, I can just.
So I've reverted back to the old skill tree, and
what you guys were just showing.
Might be a front end thing. You want the tooltips, though, right?
I would like the tooltips, but if we don't have them, I can just.
We can wing it if he doesn't have it.
I mean, so
I like winging it live.
Doing it live.
We always do it live.
We are crows. Crows have wings.
I got it.
It does.
I was with you, Billy.
Yeah.
Let's pretend and when we put the version up on.
Hey, where that black box is, where that black box is on the screen, that's where the game is. Just imagine.
It's really pretty.
Yeah.
That's how bad the old skill trees were.
And then this also is Todd and I stop it kicking the can down the road for won't someone think of the newer players. So again, you can take a tome and just give it to your new friends, and they will get 100% value. In fact, you can kind of power level a new friend.
It's its own game. That's what's cool is like all of a sudden, through this system, you've created a new track for players to like for the economy. You got item crafters, and now you've got skill crafters.
Well, you have people spending time. So if you only play knights, for example, and you just take the chivalry tree and you're not interested in anything else, well, then you can use your second slot and just be spending it on time bank the entire time and making tomes, and maybe that's how you get your money in game. So it does create another economy out there for these tomes, and maybe you do like lots of alts. So you train in chivalry and you train in scoundrel. So now you have 4 classes that you're specialized in. So again, there's a lot of options in here, and we're going to start seeing them as it gets implemented.
All right, so this is the last ditch effort. I'm going to run our demo scene, and if skills work, awesome. Granted, this is my one-off version of develop, so you could blame me. It's cool, but let's say we can survive if I just bring up the version that I was running with Todd.
Yes, that's all right.
Can you time bank exploration and crafting? Yes, you can time bank any tree, but it is locked to that tree. So there will be 70 different kinds of tomes because there's 70 different skill trees or something like that.
Yeah, I think the only reason why we separated those, we just organized them under the profession sphere.
Right.
But they work like anything else. Looking at a blue screen. We don't like blue screens.
Nope.
All right, I'm going to call just because I like to value our viewers' time.
You really shouldn't have reverted anything.
Well, your mom.
Fantastic.
Are there class level trees any longer? So the archetype trees became the class trees. The race trees are completely new. We redesigned all of the combat trees. The crafting trees are largely the same, and the harvesting trees are largely the same. So yes, there is no more training in Knight. There is no more training in Confessor. That falls under Chivalry and Arcane are the two parent trees now.
Right.
Okay.
Are we back?
Yeah, take it.
We're back.
Apologies, everyone.
Are there promotion trees anymore? There are room for promotion trees. However, it's going to take someone to get all the way through Chivalry well over a year to get through that. So we're going to add more content, and that's a question for future Mark and future Todd to answer. And we need to scoot over because...
Just a little bit.
What happened to future Blair? Why was he not included in this conversation?
I said future Blair, didn't I? I said future
Mark
Blair.
and future Todd.
I said Blair in there.
Do you know something about your future that I need to know?
I don't think so. Hopefully I'm not going to get hit by a milk truck. Okay, so one of the other things I'd like to talk about this is Billy gave us a great way to show some lore. And with the descriptions over there where it's in lore ipsum, all of that generic text over there, it actually gives us a storytelling mechanism, which we don't have currently, as well as a way to describe the system. So when you land on these pages, it should tell you something interesting about races. And we're not doing a good job of that now. And that's part of the level that we're getting to where we're becoming more of a game and less of a system test.
Exactly.
Right. So you're going to see stuff like that. That will eventually get filled in with text and it will be interesting. Yes. Well, let's talk about the class trees.
Class trees, okay.
Class trees are the ones that people are most familiar with now.
Sure. I mean, so just going to try to drill down into some of these, but unfortunately we don't have the tooltip, so I'm going to wing it on some of these.
Okay.
Yeah, indeed. So so what we're looking at here is class basics, right? So this is largely, I believe, what the vessel. Actually, no, that's the racial one. Class basics. So
it's completely new.
Yeah, it's completely new.
This is a completely new tree.
And so basically, we have a number of lines, right? Each line basically is a little more focused towards one thing or another. So, for example, this middle line here, I don't know if you can see the mouse, but it's got primarily more combat-y, offensive sort of stats, whereas the top lines are a little more class-specific stuff. I think this blank box here, I believe, was support power. This, I think, was something to do with reducing food consumption, whatever that stat is. And then, like, down on this side is more defensive stuff, right? So, I mean, this kind of gives you the opportunity to not necessarily, because we're not going to require you to have the entire tree, for example. You'll be able to skip some portion of stuff, correct? For intro, right?
Correct. I mean, you can go you have a branching path right there,
right?
As well as you don't need to train those to max, so you could just hit the 1 or 2, 3 pip,
right? So if you're not interested in, like, say, if your plan is to go up and be full on knight, all defenses, you don't care that much about offense, you could skip a few offense boxes or some of the class specific boxes, kind of things up here, stuff like that. And the important thing to know, of course, Todd has already mentioned this a couple times. No matter what class you're playing, you're going to get the benefits of each of these stats. So,
can I interrupt?
Yeah, totally.
Because they keep talking about, yes. So if you want to have a training tome for Scoundrel, you have to train to Scoundrel. Right. See how it has a locked symbol on it? You just can't go into Scoundrel and be like, I'm going to start making books for Scoundrel. You actually have to meet all the prereqs, and we're showing the prereqs now via the big lines.
Yeah.
You'll notice that there are lines that are filled in and there are lines that are not filled in, and the lines will tell you when you can train into that next skill tree. So let's keep going.
Sure. So let's say you trained up class basics, and you're primarily focusing on, say, you're going to play a duelist one of these days.
Okay.
That's the class you like to play. So now you're going down the rogue tree, right? And so we have lines up here, sort of similar, right? So we have some stuff having to do with offensive sorts of things. These, I believe, are defenses at this point. Unfortunately, I don't have the tooltip, but basically the same sort of pattern, right? So you can choose to focus more on one line or another to get those benefits, and you're going to get these stats on Ranger, Duelist, and Assassin. So pretty much any one of those you play, you're going to get all these stats when you're doing that, right? And then say you're ending. Say you want Assassin's what you're going for, right? So I mean, Mercenary is going to count for both Ranger and Assassin, right? So in this case, you're going down these lines. You know, for example, you're going to get these offensive stats or whatever, or these defensive stats or whatever on whatever Ranger or Assassin class that you play. I mean, that's pretty much it for.
So this is the old archetype trees,
right? I mean, so
yeah, this took over all the old archetype trees. Some of the stuff from the archetype trees survived. We added some new stats in there as well for new and exciting things.
So if we look at race,
so race was a outcrying from people asking for race stuff, as well as the old vessel tree, which is now gone,
right,
and the old leadership tree, which is also now gone. To kind of fold some of that stuff into the racial basics. So, right. Yeah, in fact, I see the leadership portion right there is the yellow portion.
So racial basics is pretty close to the original vessel basics tree. Very, very, actually might even be the same box. I don't remember at this point. But so racial basics, very much the same thing, right? Every character you play is going to get these stats. That's actually really pretty beneficial. And as Todd mentioned earlier, as you drill in, you'll get more and more specific. So let's say you're going to play, you're playing Sylvans, right? So again, the trees are sort of clustered in stats that are, more for one type of class or another. I believe these ones on the top here are probably like strength and intelligence. The middle ones, I believe, are regen stats. So you're gonna, things like spirit. and that's that sort of thing. So again, you can choose to prioritize the stats that are important to you.
You also broke up the stats or the attributes for the various races so that they skew based on.
Right. Actually, that's what I mean to be saying. Attributes, not stats specifically, because these the important thing to know about the race tree is that's the only place you're going to find attributes. Right. So if you want more strength, the race tree is where you're going to get that.
And you're not going to find a lot of strength, for example, up in the Sylvan tree. Sylvan is mainly Dex, isn't it?
Yeah, they're more towards. I mean, everybody gets all the stats, right? So it's not like you don't get strength if you're a Sylvan. It's just you will get more. Their Sylvans are more Dexy, right? Mm-hmm. And that's sort of the pattern for all of them, right? You'll find monsters. You know, monster races are actually the stronger ones. They have slightly higher constitution, not as smart. You'll find at the end of the day as necessarily the humans. Humans are actually kind of middle of the road. They're actually a little on the strong side, but only slightly less than monsters. Yeah, I mean,
if I could cut in, I think that's another great place to put in like that side info panel. Just what's the tree all about? Like you're talking about Sylvan being more Dexy. It's like now we can actually be very, very specific about why a tree is beneficial without people having to hunt for the information and kind of like tooltip and try to reverse engineer, oh, why is this stat important? Why is this stat important? It's like, no, we can just give you like the broad stroke, boom, right there.
Sure.
Tie some lore in it, and then all of a sudden, people have much better direction.
It just occurred to me why I couldn't remember what these two boxes were here is because we actually have the class trees we were just looking at it's all combat stuff, right? So it's all pretty much combat stats, but the race trees actually have all the goodies in them. So
there's some harvesting and some crafting.
Yep. So I mean, down here, I believe these are the harvesting stuff, and this is crafting related stuff. So there are individual lines for each of those. So it's sort of more or less, the stats are sort of broken up. And kind of offensive, defensive, and then crafting, harvesting. So it's a lines.
Let's go to the combat tree because that was the older tree that actually took the most.
Oh, right, that's true. And
we did the biggest redesign on the combat trees because it was. If you remember the old combat principles wheel, and nobody understood a lot of that stuff. But now that we have this tree of tree structures, it's very easy to understand. Oh, I want to go an armor route. I want to go a weapons route. And within the armor route, we actually made dedicated trees for each of the types, letting you specialize in that. And then down below, letting you specialize in ranged or melee or into two-handed weapons, one-handed weapons within that category as well.
And it should be noted too, and this is following the same pattern, right? So you weapon, anything you learn in weapon is you're pretty much always gonna get it because you always have a weapon, right? So this is always a gift that keeps on giving.
It's like Christmas time,
indeed. And so like melee tree, you're always going to be benefiting from these stats if you ever have a melee weapon equipped. And then at the very bottom level down here, we have things separated into standard melee and great melee. Each of these lines is actually, I don't know if this is the right thing, but each of these lines actually corresponds to a specific weapon.
Yeah, that doesn't look like the correct.
I don't know if this is the right tree actually,
because that looks like I see stone stuff in there.
Yeah, so I mean, this is what we're looking at here is actually just a mock-up. Billy's literally in the process of making this. That's why that's why we're bringing it here. But so essentially, there's a line for each weapon. So under great melee, for example, there's a line for two-handed sword and poleaxe, polearm. Basically, each of our two-handed weapons. The one-handed tree has your one-handed sword, mace, axe, and the rest of them. And so they all do that funneling sort of awesome thing.
Yeah, and Tinnis had a question about what happened to the stealth and siege trees, and we're just not ready to have stuff in them yet.
Yeah.
So we just didn't put them in there. These are all trees that are fully functional and have fully functional stat boxes in there. If we have to add new ones, it's very easy for us to add a new skill tree here. And
we'll just tack them on.
Yep.
Tack them on if we need them.
That will be our content in the future, is new trees.
Yes, indeed.
Okay.
think if there's anything else to cover.
Yeah, the crafting trees are
basics.
largely the same, as well as the harvesting trees. So we don't really need to show those two.
So,
Okay.
Yeah.
I think
All
Todd
right.
and I could go back to general Q&A.
All right. I will.
Pay the way for Todd. Get back in here.
All right, so hold on one sec.
Would cleric be a melee or ranged tree? They are ranged, right, Mark?
They are in fact ranged.
Yeah, all other stuff is... cleric goes under the divine skill tree in class, and their stuff is ranged. They throw their hammers.
All right, so one, I'll just start tackling some of the things that are thrown out here. So one, Soul Reaver said it's sad to see so much of the dependency on others becoming much less. So it definitely is less, but where we were before on the spectrum, you were incredibly dependent on almost everything in the game on other people. Like, I don't feel like this is a situation where we had it perfect and we've now shoved it towards less dependent. I feel like we had it way too dependent, and we've tried to now correct course and make it to where you're not as dependent. I think that people are kind of, in their mind, they're going, oh my gosh, this stuff is transferable, so now everybody's going to immediately get all the things.
Yeah.
And that's not, I mean, the way this thing is done with the time banks requiring you to actually unlock further trees and the diminishing returns means that what you're going to see is you're going to see a lot of tomes, I think, helping people fill in the basics at the lower level of the basics, and maybe over time start to fill in the lower levels of the advanced trees, but you still have to actually earn your way to those.
Right, there's still a requirement of time. Right. It's not, you see this, you're like, oh, Billy just pressed that button. It's as easy as just pressing the button. There's a time delay in there of 3 real life days.
Right.
And you have to be willing to be that person.
So somebody just said, what if my alt goes to the basic twice as fast? It can't, right? You got 2 trains in that category, but you can only train in one tree at a time. So you're either training that tree or you're banking stuff in the time bank. You can't do both.
Both, right.
Right? So I mean, you're going to have to actually earn it to be able to then bank anything and use it. So I've got 2 points real quick about pay to win because I want to address them. First of all is there's a distinction between pay to win and twinking. Twinking is basically the process of me having a buddy for whatever reason help me in the game. And it is rampant, and it has been a part of these online games since the beginning, right? If I go down the hall in my dorm and buy Blair a 6-pack of beer and he gives me a longsword he crafted, that is not pay to win. He crafted the longsword. He's doing me a favor. I maybe bought him some beer, which I'm not going to do, by the way. But that's twinking. That's a normal thing. So if you think about skills, training is not different than a longsword. I mean, it is a different wrapper and it's tying into a different system. But ultimately, it all comes down to just in-game power, my ability to exert my will upon this universe. So twinking has been around forever. So just because somebody can actually bribe Blair with beer doesn't make the game any more pay to win than any other game. And quite frankly, I'm not going to try and solve that problem because it's impossible to solve.
I think twinking is fun,
It is. I actually don't mind twinking. I don't mind that I can get my buddy in.
It goes back to the beginning. It's part of us being friends.
So I think that's cool. That's point number 1 is twinking is not pay to win. Point number 2 is what I think people are missing here is that VIP tickets are transferable and tomes are transferable. You, as a non-payer, can take complete and full advantage of this system just like a person who actually paid into the system. In fact, if anything, to me, this is a better deal now for people who are not VIP because it gives them something else to now trade for that allows them to get VIP tickets, at which point they've got all the benefits, even though they didn't put another dime into the game. So I can totally understand some people saying, I'm concerned about this from a, passing around skills standpoint.
Sure.
Saying, well, I want my decisions to have more consequence. Okay, that's a valid pushback. That doesn't make it pay to win. If I can absolutely get it, and not like through a whole bunch of grinding or something like that, just through natural gameplay. If I'm a good crafter, if I can naturally get VIP and I can naturally trade for tomes as equal to anybody else, to me, that's kind of the opposite of pay to win. I don't see it as pay to win at all. So
So what's to stop people from selling time in VIP from a gold selling website?
Well, so that's a question I could ask you about longswords, right? What's to stop people from selling longswords?
Yeah.
So we'll do the best that we can to police against that, but ultimately we're not like somehow immune to the problems that plague every MMO ever. We're just trying to come up with a system that levels the playing field. So if I've got a lot of time and I care about the game and I'm a vibrant member of the game, I'm putting time and effort into the game, then I'm not at any disadvantage versus people who put in money. That was my goal, and I think the system absolutely achieves that. I also will bring up that EVE Online has had the syringes in their game for a long time, which allows you to do exactly something like this, and it is neither considered pay to win nor has it unbalanced the game. Right? Basically it's a catch up mechanic. So anyway, there's a couple points. So
yeah.
I think the concern is that gaining training tomes is earned by purely being online. Well, again, that's with EVE as well, right? It's passive training, and you can download skills into a syringe, and I can trade that syringe to you, or you can buy me some beer, and I can give that syringe to you, and you can use it, and it allows you to catch up. The catch-up mechanic is actually a big deal, guys. I mean, the problem is, remember that for us to make this game healthy over time, we need new players coming in, because it's inevitable you have some churn and some players leave. If those players, the new players coming in, are at a permanent disadvantage in the game, that sucks. I mean, a lot of people simply won't join. I know in EVE, this was a problem, and it's part of the reason they put the syringes in, is if I come 6 months late, it's just like, oh, well, I guess I'm just 6 months permanently worse than everybody else. That causes a lot of people to not play the game. So the fact that this allows people to have a catch-up mechanic, but still has diminishing returns, which is basically allowing them to catch up at the beginning, but not allowing them to soar forward.
Correct.
I think it absolutely hits a really nice balance. No system is perfect, but I think this one is really solid. I'm very proud of it.
If I have 30 accounts, so you paid for 30 accounts.
Okay.
How does that affect the game as opposed to a player with only one account?
Well, if that player with only one account is a master crafter and they are creating 30 longswords that they can then trade to other people for training tomes, I don't know actually how it would be any different, quite frankly. Also, those 30 accounts, in order to give you anything beyond basics, means that you're going to have to hold off on your plan to actually transfer these over to one until you get to the tree that you want. And then basically you need to start banking all of those minutes, at which point they're not making any progress anymore. And then you transfer them over. And okay, the first one that you do in that, you get 100% credit for it. And now you've trained up 10% of that tree. And the next one, you only get 90% credit. And eventually now you're dumping in 72 hours worth of minutes.
And you're getting back
10 minutes worth of benefit out of it. I just, okay, I guess technically you could do it. But again, a person who is a part of a mercenary company and hires out their services, they can do the exact same thing without ever spending a dime. So I can understand people being annoyed by the idea of twinking, right? It could offend your sensibilities, but twinking is just a thing, and it's not pay to win.
Well, I think also they envision, at least from the comments, it's very easy for me to go get 20 accounts and start dumping that time into feeding it into one account.
Right.
But in reality, you would have to get 30 accounts, which is a big investment.
Right.
Then you would need to train to the more advanced trees, because dumping it into the basics tree, really, who cares? There isn't too much power in the basics tree.
Yeah.
And those accounts that are feeders have to train first. So they need to take just as long to get there as the other account. So it's not like they're feeding in instantaneously.
No, they kind of have to wait like a year for those accounts to ripen to where they could get the benefit.
And then you shut off progression to train in that tree, because you can't be progressing within the same tree as well as storing time over time. So that's why we really like it. We don't see the feeding, as has been explained here, as that much of a problem.
I don't see it as.
Yeah.
I mean, so we can't control other people buying accounts, other additional alt accounts. That's not something that we can stop. But quite frankly, if you really wanted to do this, if your goal was, I just want to stack up, getting additional accounts is the dumbest way to do it. I mean, it's going to take you a year to get into those trees to start. Just go trade other players, right? Like makes a lot more sense. Is just get VIP tickets. And then use those VIP tickets to trade to other players. And then those players who didn't spend any money are now VIP. So everybody wins, right? At that point, non-VIP players without having to spend any money get VIP status, so they're no disadvantage at all. You manage to get a wider base, which is what you set out to do. We get additional revenue, which we get to reinvest in the game, which is a thing. I mean, I know you guys would like to believe that doesn't matter, but it does. I mean, ultimately, we can only make this game by paying the people here. And we're not greedy developers. We're just trying to make an amazing game and keep our people fed. And so far, by the way, we're not even close to paying our monthly cost. So we went through, we took a measured approach to this. We tried to think it from every angle that we could. I think it is fair. I don't think it's unbalanced. I think it's based very clearly on another product that's already come out and done something very similar. It didn't destroy their community. It didn't destroy their game. It didn't consider that nobody considers it pay to win. It turned out fine. And I think that the benefit of now giving non-VIP players a way to earn their way into VIP, I think is really cool. I think it's going to be great for the economy. I think overall it's just a really solid design.
I think it is as well. And I think that they probably don't realize how much you and I agonize over the pay-to-win aspect.
Right.
All the time. We just literally agonize over it. And that is a factor in many of our decisions.
Yeah.
And we always try and go on the side of not.
We've always done that. I mean, ultimately, the fact that we charge money at all for the game means in the eyes of some people, we're going to be considered pay to win. And that's the world we live in. So we have to draw the line where we think it is fair and we think it is reasonable. We've always, I think, done a pretty good job of that. And I don't think this is any different.
No. Yep.
What if I give a tome to, what is that? If I'm already at 100% and I try and use a tome, that doesn't do anything, right?
Yeah, because the diminishing returns would be, the percent trained in the tree is a multiplier basically on how much you get from that tome. So if you are 50% of the tree, you only get 50% values of the tome.
I have a question.
Okay, so here, I didn't understand what his pushback was. So his pushback, I think, is he's worried about the uniqueness of the professions. So yes and no, right? So as I said earlier, this absolutely pushes us away from the specialization and dependence. But the feeling that I had up until now was that, quite frankly, we were tilted way too far in terms of specialization. The other problem that I had with it is I really didn't like the previous system forcing you to make a uninformed decision about what kind of character you wanted to play and then feeling forever like you had made the wrong call and you were inefficient as a result. So I actually think this is stronger. I do hear your concern that you're worried now that people will be too generalized. I don't think it's actually going to be a problem. If it is, then we'll look at it and we'll adjust the system. I mean, none of this is done with us in a room not listening to your feedback. The entire reason that we didn't just go with the last system that we put out was because we read your feedback, and I thought you guys had some very valid points. So, can we look at this stuff? Of course we will. But I personally feel like this is a great approach to tackling not just one, but like half a dozen problems at once. I think it's also very easy to explain. Mm-hmm. So overall, I'm very happy with the system. If it turns out that people are too generalized now, okay, then we'll go into the trees and we'll adjust them to allow for more specialization.
I mean, but if you look at the profession, probably what people are going to do is train an exploration as well as a combat one, or if they're really combat focused, they're going to train two different trees within the combat sphere, right?
Right.
So you're going to end up training armor and weapons at the same time, or leather specialization and two-handed melee specialization at the same time. But this does give you an option to train a little bit of exploration, because the exploration tree is full of gameplay stuff.
It is. I just, the idea that now this is going to make everybody into a generalist, I don't think is actually, I think it's so far outside the realm of expectation.
Okay, that button doesn't work.
All right. So I think that we've covered it enough now that you guys can go and theory craft on it and get on the forums and give us your good, your bad, and your ugly. We will read all the posts just like we always do. We will probably agree with some of the points, disagree with other points, and do what we always do, which is we'll adapt.
Sure. And Weebles TV, your question. The skill tome is locked to the tree that it is in, not a branch, that tree. So it can only be used within the tree that it was created in.
So cool. All right. Well, I think that's probably enough for this morning. We've been going for an hour, and we gave you guys more than enough to discuss and to think about. So I want to thank all of you for coming by. I hope that once you dig in and see this thing actually in work, you'll recognize that it's overall just a huge net benefit to us. I believe that you will see that, but we'll see. So thanks for coming by, and we will see you guys on the forums. And I think we've got
5.3.
And we've got another version coming up, I think, later today as well, that we want to do some more performance testing. So for those of you who are logging into live right now, I want to thank you for that. It's incredibly helpful.
We're definitely getting great server metrics and making a lot of positive changes to the campaign worlds that we're working on right now based on you guys showing up. So please continue to show up and give us that useful data.
Cool. All right. Thank you very much. Y'all have a great rest of the day. See you in game.